The army of the Demon King sought the destruction of the world. Before the world could respond, it was erased by a mysterious force led by a single human. Without warning, that force appeared. It spread across the land, gained power, and crushed everything in its path alongside its strongest subordinates, known as the Hakai. Their advance was relentless and precise. In the end, the Demon King was cornered. A blade was pressed to his throat, and the battle reached its conclusion. The human leader revealed his identity as the Corpse King, ruler of Helheim. He announced that the war was finished, turned away from the battlefield, and declared Helheim's withdrawal as his group departed. Not long after that moment, the Corpse King vanished without a trace. Time shifts. A young man woke from a dream, recognizing it as another memory of the Corpse King. That figure's true identity was Hizaki Shio, once an ordinary middle school student. He had been summoned to another world along with his entire class. One by one, his classmates died, until he was the only one left. Driven by revenge, he took on the name of the Corpse King. He gathered forces capable of opposing the Demon King and formed a secret organization known as Helheim. Through that power, he defeated the Demon King. Immediately after, he was forcibly returned to his original world. That was the story up to now. In the present, his reaction to that past was raw and unrestrained. He rejected the name Helheim and the identity of the Corpse King, overwhelmed by how embarrassing it all felt. He wished that the phase of Chunibu he associated with that persona had disappeared along with the Demon King. His classmates who had died never returned. During his sessions with a psychiatrist, it was noted that only a month had passed in his original world, while 5 full years had elapsed for him in the other one. He remembered his close friends, the girl he had feelings for, and even the classmate he never got along with. All of them were gone. He resolved not to forget them. After steadying himself, he struck his own face with both hands, forcing himself awake. That day was his high school graduation ceremony. Even with the weight of survivor's guilt, he accepted that he had to keep living. As he stepped out of his bedroom, he saw something unexpected. The sight marked the beginning of something he would never forget. Then a woman appeared before him, signaling a reunion after a long absence. She addressed him by his full name, Hizaki Shu, and was about to continue with another name. He stopped her before she could finish and demanded to know what she wanted. He pointed out that he had already defeated the Demon King, and questioned why she had appeared now, identifying her as a god. The god explained that something called Helheim was running rampant in her world, and that he needed to deal with it. She repeated the name and asked whether he knew Helheim. She clarified that it was the secret society he himself had created. Hizaki acknowledged it and insisted that she stop repeating the name. She explained that it had been difficult to locate him again across the many different worlds. Since he had been forcibly returned, he had no way of knowing what was happening on her side. She was aware of that, which was why she had come to summon him personally. She made it clear that the situation in her world had deteriorated badly because of those children, and that he needed to take responsibility and stop them. She stated that they would depart immediately, and asked whether he was fine being sent to a random location. Hizaki reacted with surprise at how quickly she changed her stance. He then asked about his abilities in magic, seeking confirmation that they would carry over from before. The god denied that expectation. Everything would be reset. She added that this included the ice magic he had mastered to its core, and the unique power that made him the Corpse King. Hizaki showed visible concern. He accepted it, acknowledging that this was the natural consequence of leaving a world. The god responded by reminding him that he had already repaid his debt to his classmates by defeating the Demon King, and that he should stop blaming himself so harshly. Hizaki accepted her words. He stated that since he was the one who formed Helheim, he would take responsibility for what was happening. He then asked about the seals placed on its members. The god told him that the seals were gone. She added that it would be fine because even without them, those children would still believe in Hizaki and keep their promises. She remarked that Hizaki was truly remarkable. Overcome with emotion, he could not understand why Helheim had gone out of control, sensing that something else must be at play. The god then spoke in praise of the gruesome king who ruled over a mountain of corpses, acknowledging his power as one recognized by the heavens. With that, she declared that it was time for him to leave his place of comfort, marking the return of the Corpse King. The god added that she rarely did such things, but as thanks for saving her world, she would grant him a small reward. The scene shifts to Eljudnir, the headquarters of the secret society. A woman sat upon the throne, speaking quietly to herself. Once again, the one she waited for had not returned. She wondered how much time had passed since his disappearance. With him gone, the Hakai had scattered. The one she was thinking of was Corpse King Hel, Shiu himself. Her thoughts drifted to a memory. He had once acknowledged that her clear judgment, acting as the organization's mind, was what kept Helheim intact. She was Nilf the Undiluted, the right hand of the Corpse King. Overcome with emotion, Nilf spoke his name, Shiu. She did not care if she would never see him again, as long as he was alive somewhere. Before that feeling could fully settle, a knock echoed through the room. She rushed toward the door, unsettled. Only the Hakai and the Corpse King were supposed to know of this place. The moment she opened it, someone threw herself into Nilf's arms. It was Garm. Nilf questioned why she was here. Garm, shaking with emotion, insisted that she could smell the Corpse King. Their king had returned. The focus shifts back to Hizaki. He confirmed that the summoning had succeeded and moved to check his status. His name was listed as Shiu Hizaki. His available magic was reduced to ice magic at level 1. His ability was recorded as the Blessing of Death. Power would be released according to the total number of creatures whose lives he had taken, currently at 0 out of 100. Another ability would be acquired according to the total number of friendly beings lost, currently 0 out of 1. He still carried the title of Corpse King, a mark of recognition from a god for great deeds, granting a tremendous increase to magical growth rate. The Blessing of Death was identified plainly as the root of everything that had followed. In essence, it was a power without distinction. Demons, humans, or anything running wild in that world were all the same. The more he defeated, the stronger he became. Simple, direct, and overwhelmingly effective. However, there was a condition that lingered. Power gained through the loss of friendly beings. An ability born from such circumstances could only be described as vile. The first time the ability of a fallen classmate flowed into him, he nearly lost his sanity, forced to experience everything they had endured. All of them were already dead. That was the reason he had been able to defeat the Demon King. The memory left him momentarily without words. He resolved that this time, he would not allow that ability to activate. He would not let it happen again. A faint glow emerged from his chest. From it, he summoned Int Glacius, and a dagger took form in his hand. His priority was clear. He would search for them first. Elsewhere, a woman moved through a crowd, struggling to process what she had witnessed. Until the previous day, the Griffel Sea of Trees had been nothing more than an ordinary forest. Now it was completely frozen. Aside from demons and rebels said to inhabit the area, it had never been anything unusual. Someone suggested that it must be the work of a high-ranking demon. One man urged the princess to remain behind while he dispatched the knights. She refused. As an heir of the royal bloodline that defeated the Demon King, she believed it was her duty to act. She soon entered the forest herself. The cold was severe, and she determined that ice magic had almost certainly been used. She also noticed the absence of any living presence. That observation led her to conclude that a high-ranking demon was likely responsible. A sound nearby caught her attention. She drew her sword and focused, unsure whether she was facing a demon, an animal, or a person. She approached carefully and found a man collapsed in the frozen forest. She checked on him and assumed he had been attacked by a demon, urging him to endure. The man was Hizaki. He was barely conscious and suffering from hunger, close to dying. Later, he was eating. The food tasted so good that he felt he could die content. The princess cautioned him to eat slowly. He expressed his gratitude, believing he would have perished alone in the forest. She replied that no one could have predicted the forest would become like this, given the extreme cold. Hizaki noticed the crest she carried. Realizing she had not introduced herself, she asked him not to be surprised. She revealed herself as the 5th princess of the Holy Kingdom of Griffel, Asha el Griffel. Hizaki repeated the title in disbelief. She questioned whether it shocked him. He wondered whether a 5th princess truly existed. She confirmed it proudly, stating that she was a descendant of the royal family that defeated the Demon King 180 years earlier. Hizaki stopped her there. Doubt crept into his expression as he questioned what it meant for the Demon King to have been defeated so long ago. Asha noticed his murmuring and wondered if he had lost his memory. She then asked for his name. Before he could finish giving it, a blade pressed against the side of his face, stopping him cold. Several men emerged from the surroundings. One of them warned the princess not to move, threatening his life. He questioned whether she was responsible for freezing the entire forest, and remarked that turning the forest to ice had made it easy to catch such valuable prey. The man introduced himself as Lucas, a high-ranking member of Helheim's intelligence division. He stated his affiliation openly and acknowledged the encounter with satisfaction. Hizaki processed the name he had just heard, Helheim. He concluded calmly that this meant trouble was unavoidable. They forced Asha to the ground and bound her hands. Lucas assumed they had drawn attention because of the major disturbance in the forest. The Holy Kingdom's royal family was certain to respond. He had not expected to catch a sharp and dangerous wild boar, and certainly not with an additional prize. Hizaki was restrained as well. Lucas assured them that they would be treated with respect and instructed them to accompany him quietly. Asha reacted with open hostility, condemning Lucas as a fraud and wishing severe punishment upon him. Lucas merely sighed at her response. In return, the group turned their violence on Hizaki, kicking and beating him. Asha protested, insisting that Hizaki had nothing to do with the situation. Lucas acknowledged that he understood her nature. Despite her appearance, she possessed martial skill and a strong sense of justice. He explained that this was precisely why such methods were effective against people like her. Hizaki then addressed Lucas directly, demanding to know who he was. Lucas responded dismissively, as if excusing Hizaki's ignorance. Hizaki stated plainly that he did not recognize him. That answer provoked Lucas. He struck Hizaki in the face and asserted that in this era, Hizaki should know the name Helheim. Lucas declared himself a high-ranking member of Helheim. He claimed that the frozen forest before them was his doing, the result of his own power as a member of its intelligence division. Asha attempted to intervene, trying to strike him despite being bound. She declared that he would be punished for his actions and denounced Helheim as a cruel and inhumane organization that ruled the world from the shadows. Lucas prepared to demonstrate what he called his own form of terror. Before he could continue, Hizaki interrupted him. He stated that such a person did not exist. Lucas reacted in confusion. Hizaki rose to his feet and repeated himself, questioning whether Lucas had failed to hear him the first time. He stated clearly that there was no one by that name within Helheim. As he spoke, he snapped the ropes binding his hands. Several members of the group were visibly shaken. Hizaki ordered them to be silent and listen carefully. He pointed out, first and foremost, that openly discussing a secret society defeated its very purpose. Hizaki stood before the group and Asha and stated that calling something atrocious or inhumane was just as pointless. Lucas's men reacted with visible shock. Hizaki continued, explaining that a true secret society stayed hidden, acted through obscurity, and remained elusive. Once its name spread openly across the world, it stopped being a secret society altogether. He let out a breath and added that he was relieved they were not responsible for the strange incident affecting the forest. Lucas reacted with anger and confusion, demanding to know what Hizaki was talking about. Hizaki shortened it for him. High-ranking members of Helheim did not reveal their names. Anyone who failed to follow that rule was unfit to belong to Helheim. With that, he activated his ice magic. Cold surged outward, freezing Lucas and his entire group in place. Hizaki pointed out that Lucas already knew the truth. He was not the one who had frozen the forest. Hizaki stated that during the single month he had spent in that world, he had taken a total of 1,458 lives. Encased in ice, Lucas struggled to comprehend what he was hearing and experiencing. Hizaki added that Lucas did not even understand what that number truly meant. That was how he knew Lucas did not belong to Helheim. He snapped his fingers and ordered him to die. Lucas and his men shattered, their frozen bodies crushed and torn apart. Hizaki warned that no one should ever dare to assume the name of Helheim again. Then he paused, stopping himself. A thought surfaced. Had Helheim really become that widespread? Had his delusional fantasy spread across the entire world? Even the name itself felt painfully familiar. Exactly the kind of thing he would have come up with, enough to give him a headache. Asha raised her sword and confronted him, demanding to know whether he was responsible for freezing the forest. Hizaki admitted that he had overdone it and offered an apology. Asha ordered him to stop where he was. She asked him about his objective and why he was doing any of this. Hizaki hesitated before answering that his goal was to kill demons. The Demon King might have been defeated, but demons still roamed the world, slaughtering humans. If that was his purpose, he believed the princess would understand. Asha held her sword toward him, her hands trembling. Hizaki told her not to be afraid. She insisted that she was not. Though her body betrayed her, he gave her his name, Shiu, and described himself as nothing more than an ordinary human. Hearing the name left Asha stunned. He turned to leave, stating that he had something he needed to take care of. As he walked away, he said that he would return the favor someday, if he remembered. Asha called after him, and realization struck her. This was the Corpse King. In her understanding, he was an enemy once defeated by the world's hero, the hero who carried both the legacy of the Demon King's slayer and the Griffel royal bloodline. He was a great sinner, responsible for taking the lives of 32 of the hero's companions. Her body trembled as she acknowledged the reality. In her current state, she could not win. But if he truly was the Corpse King, then she had no choice but to defeat him. She swore it in the name of the royal family. Brief pause before the next panel. In Manga rules, subscribing boosts your luck stat by +10. Don't stay a background character, hit subscribe. Meanwhile, at the headquarters, a hooded figure informed two men that the Griffel Sea of Trees had been frozen solid. As the figure turned to leave, he stated that it was neither a natural nor a conventional magical phenomenon. It might have been possible if the Demon King or a high-ranking demon were involved. The two men reacted with disbelief. The hooded figure dismissed it as a baseless theory and instructed one of them to report to the Emperor and wait for further information. Elsewhere, another mysterious figure was already being informed. There was no longer any doubt. They had been waiting for the Corpse King, Helsama. A woman with long hair suddenly rushed forward, calling out to the Corpse King. Her name was Nidhogg. Shiu observed that the blessing of death was no different from before. The first 100 lives, then 1,000, then 2,000. A growing mountain of corpses would elevate him further and further, until killing demons became routine. A violent rhythm surged through his thoughts, urging him to kill again and again. He rejected it repeatedly. There was no value in recalling it. There was no reason to dwell on it. He then addressed the presence around him, stating that the two of them should come out, because he knew they were there. As he waited, his thoughts continued. Perhaps they were reluctant. Unless he forced the issue. He questioned whether they felt no shame. He had come up with it himself, yet he was the one most embarrassed by it. He accepted it and resolved to proceed. He spoke a command, swearing his precepts before him. At that moment, the two figures appeared. They were the unswaying Garm and the undiluted Nilf. Shiu expressed relief that they were both doing well. Nilf questioned whether he truly was the Corpse King. Shiu confirmed it and asked again that they stop calling him that. The two of them could only stare at him in disbelief. He understood that they had been waiting for a long time. Knowing that, he felt he had to meet their expectations. He apologized for keeping them waiting. He declared that the Corpse King had returned and extended his hand to Nilf. She broke down in tears of happiness and welcomed him back. Garm cried as well, stating that they had not been waiting long at all and welcoming their king's return. Shiu simply acknowledged it. Nilf then presented him with something. Shiu was caught off guard when he saw the matching cloak of Helheim. He explained that he had personally cut pieces from the hem in the past. The two watched him with amazement. He put the cloak on. Even now, he admitted that it still looked good. He then told them it was time to go. He declared that those who had falsely assumed their name would be crushed by his own hands, and told the two to follow him. Both responded with unwavering resolve, stating that everything would be according to the will of their king. Suddenly, Shiu crouched down and clutched his head. Nilf asked what was wrong. He said he was fine, explaining that he only felt like he had died a little inside. It was the fault of his Chunabu phase for creating such a phrase in the first place. Still, he admitted that he was glad to be back. Nilf and Garm watched him with quiet, happy smiles. Within the jungle, Shiu admitted to Nilf that he was the one who had frozen the Griffle Sea of trees. He acknowledged that this was the path he had chosen. Nilf replied that their targets were likely somewhere across the plain they were traversing. She noted that over the decades, the terrain had changed significantly due to the influence of magic and demons. As they examined the map, Nilf observed that areas once marked as unexplored now appeared to have been surveyed within just the past few years. The map only offered a broad bird's-eye perspective. Before she could finish explaining its limitations, Shiu pointed out that it was still far better than having nothing at all. Nilf then suggested that if they wanted to gather information near the area she had indicated, the best destination would be the town of explorers, which is Gat. She considered it a suitable choice. Garm added that it had been a long time since she had last visited Gat. Shiu reasoned that since information gathered in one place tended to spread quickly, they might also uncover details about those falsely claiming the name of Helheim and acting without restraint. Garm looked at him with admiration, remarking on how impressive their king was. She added that Shiu spoke just like an ordinary person, and noted that he was a convincing presence. Nilf immediately corrected her, stating that their king was capable of anything. She added that playing the role of a harmless gentleman was not difficult for him, and asked for confirmation. Shiu acknowledged it, noting inwardly that he was simply acting as himself. He concluded that this approach would be the most effective way to gather information for now. He admitted that for various reasons, he was weaker than he had been at his peak and that he would be relying on Nilf and Garm. Nilf and Garm stepped closer. Nilf declared her intent to protect him even at the cost of her own life. Garm reacted with visible surprise, realizing it was the first time their king had openly said he was counting on them. Shiu reflected that he had always relied on them. Seeing their unwavering devotion, he felt the need to grow stronger as soon as possible. At that moment, something massive emerged ahead of them. It was enormous and clad in armor. Nilf identified it as an intermediate-level demon, meaning the supposedly unexplored area ranked at least level 5. It was an especially troublesome place to have been transported into. Garm stepped forward and volunteered. She expressed confidence in her own reliability. Shiu accepted it, entrusting the task to her. Garm reacted with clear enthusiasm. She confronted the demon directly, provoking it as it charged toward her. The demon struck, swinging its arm and sending Garm flying. She recovered almost instantly, exhaling sharply. The demon was powerful, but its strength seemed limited to that alone. Garm rolled up her sleeves, preparing herself. Nilf and Shiu observed calmly. Shiu noted that this was Garm's specialty. Garm activated her ability, her body transforming as her arms took on the traits of a beast. She locked her limbs around the demon's neck. Shiu remained impressed, and even Nilf watched in continued amazement. Garm's ability, Indestructible Beast Body, was a defensive power that rendered her immune to all damage except fatal blows. Defeating her required a single decisive strike. As a beast folk, she already possessed exceptional physical resilience, and even among her kind, her capabilities stood far above the rest. She embodied the meaning of extraordinary. Once the demon was finished, Garm turned back, seeking acknowledgement for her work. Shiu affirmed that he had known he could rely on her. He noted that there was no one more difficult to deal with than her in combat. He felt genuine relief knowing that Garm stood on his side. Not long after, the three of them arrived at their destination, the town of explorers, which is Gat. Nilf sensed a change the moment they stepped further into Gat. The explorers were agitated, moving in hurried clusters. She wondered what had caused the sudden frenzy. Xiao took in the sight of Gat with quiet familiarity. It was the first town he had visited after being summoned long ago. The scenery stirred old memories, and for a moment his attention drifted. Garm noticed and questioned his silence. Xiu dismissed it and redirected their focus to gathering information. He considered the group claiming to be Helheim. He could not completely rule out the involvement of high-ranking members. However, if that were truly the case, the scale of destruction would have been far greater. As he entered the bar, he forced himself to set those thoughts aside. What mattered was identifying three things first: their purpose, their behavior, and the trail they left behind. He surveyed the patrons. Among them, he identified potential candidates willing to talk. A young man and woman drinking together caught his attention. Their hair and eye colors, paired with novice-grade leather equipment, suggested low-level explorers, likely level 2 or 3, possibly from the same hometown. That increased the chances of cooperation. He decided to approach them. At the table, the girl checked on her companion, who had clearly drunk too much. He apologized and excused himself, saying he felt sick. She asked if he was all right and offered to go with him. Before she could move, Xiu approached her and asked whether she was alone. She dismissed him, stating that she had been drinking with her companion. Xiu said he would only sit briefly. She repeated herself, but before she could finish, he clarified that he only wanted to ask a few questions, relying on his composed demeanor. The girl hesitated, her reaction softening. Elsewhere, in Xiu's original world, a new scene unfolded. A girl walked to school thinking about someone who had not woken up at his usual time that morning. She wondered whether he would make it in time. As she walked, a classmate greeted her and mentioned that school would end early that day, asking if she might be free afterward. Before he could finish, she explained that she already had plans with her brother. He accepted it and suggested another time. Her name was Hizaki Hyuka. There was someone she cared deeply for, her brother, Hizaki Shiu. They shared similar features inherited from their parents, making his appearance naturally striking. Beyond that, Shiu was attentive to his family, and especially gentle toward her. He was kind, dependable, and had always been close to her since childhood. To Hyuka, there was no reason not to feel the way she did. She was not interested in romantic relationships with people her age. Suddenly, everything changed. She and the other students froze in shock. Their surroundings vanished. The classroom was gone. The location was unfamiliar. White light stretched endlessly in all directions. No one understood what was happening. Then a presence appeared. A god revealed herself and explained that this was how it would proceed. Every student there was being summoned to another world. They were told to do their best. Hyuka struggled to process the words. Another world. Murmurs spread through the white space as the meaning of the god's words began to sink in. The students struggled to process what they had just been told. The idea of another world left them frozen in disbelief. Confusion spread as questions surfaced from different directions, some asking what it meant, others unfamiliar even with the concept itself. Among them, frustration surfaced over how casually some treated the situation, unaware of the implications of being summoned to another world. One of the students demanded to be returned to the classroom, rejecting everything the god had said. The god responded calmly. She assured them that proper arrangements would be made for their well-being. They would be taken care of. She encouraged them to enjoy their lives in the other world. Hyuka stepped forward and objected. She did not want to go. The god replied that she was not the one who had initiated the summoning. If there were objections, they should be directed toward the locals who had called them there. She then moved on to what she described as the appealing part. Each student who chose to go would receive an ability, a special power, a skill. It would be used to fulfill the summoner's goals, but beyond that, they would be free to use it however they wished. There would be no studies and no work. They could pursue wealth, status, or simply live as they pleased. The god released a sphere into the space. She explained that the students would be transported in the order they touched it. They were free to proceed. Most of the students chose to move forward. One of them encouraged Hyuka to come along, but she declined, telling him to go first. She wanted time to think on her own. If he wanted to leave, he should do so without her. The god questioned whether she intended to stay, noting that the opportunity would soon close. Hyuka asked what would happen if she chose not to go. The answer was immediate. Anyone who stayed behind would remain trapped in the white void forever. Hyuka pleaded to be returned to her original world. The god stated that it was not possible. Hyuka asked what would happen if she killed her instead. The god answered with thinly veiled sarcasm, mocking the idea itself. She claimed to be terrified by Hyuka's words, yet immediately dismissed them as pointless. A god could not die, she said, making the thought nothing more than an empty gesture. Hyuka fell silent. The weight of everything pressed down on her, leaving no room for words. The god tilted her head and finally asked for her name. Hyuka answered without hesitation, Hizaki Hyuka. At that, the god's expression shifted, as if a puzzle piece had clicked into place. So that's how it is, she murmured. She pointed out that Hyuka's brother had disappeared about a month ago, then calmly asked if she had guessed correctly. The god added that the key to that mystery lay straight ahead. Hyuka's thoughts spiraled. Does this woman know my brother's secret? And if she did, then maybe, just maybe, there was a way back, just like him. Hyuka asked the question she had been holding back. If she achieved the goal, could she return home? The god answered plainly that this had been the case for him, which meant this was a one-way journey with no guarantee of ever coming back. After a brief pause, Hyuka stepped forward. She reached out and placed her hand on the sphere. As the light began to react, the god watched in silence, wondering how many of them would survive this time. Back in the bar, Shu explained that he had just arrived in their town. He noted a disturbance and asked if she knew anything about it. The girl explained that an intermediate demon had appeared in the level 3 unexplored area of Battlefield Cage. There had been a string of missing persons linked to the area. Shu questioned whether it was safe for her to be there. She hesitated but confirmed she was managing. The demon was clad in armor, and everyone suspected it was responsible for the disappearances. She suggested that Shiu could consult the missing persons search request board if he wanted to investigate further. Shiu acknowledged the information and asked about the Helheim. The girl confirmed it was well known across the empire. Shiu inferred that Helheim might be involved and asked what their current activities were. She explained that Helheim seemed to be acting in line with the demon tribe's wishes, abducting, mugging, and massacring people across the empire. It was only a matter of time before they would be wanted throughout the continent. Xiao let out a quiet sigh and thanked her. Her information had been invaluable. As the conversation settled, the girl's companion, Ando, returned after throwing up, calling out her name, Neem. Neem noticed Ando's return and asked if he was all right. Ando, spotting her flushed face, asked why. Before Neem could respond, Xiu had already disappeared, walking out into the street. In another bar, Nilf approached a man, seeking information. The man glanced at her and asked how much money she carried, hinting that without it, other alternatives would suffice. Nilf seized his arm, repeating that she only wanted information, emphasizing that information could be exchanged for money or other knowledge. The man called his chief, who immediately recognized Nilf's insight, acknowledging that she had seen through him. Nilf pressed for details on Helheim, requesting the freshest information available. The chief admitted there was little concrete, mostly rumors, but mentioned one piece that might be connected to the current unrest. Nilf remained impassive, her expression betraying neither interest nor impatience. The chief, holding a cup, watched it inexplicably move across the table. He realized it had been shifted and questioned if Nilf was responsible. She was known as an information broker who could manipulate time, her very existence a rare anomaly. The chief declared that no exchange of information was necessary. The mere proof of her presence was more significant than any intelligence. Nilf left the bar, her mission yielding little tangible result. Outside, Garm strained to gather information through her cat-like ears. The city was alive with chatter, and the sheer volume of sounds threatened to overwhelm her focus. With such an amount of data, she could have relied on the Corpse King or Nilf, yet she worked alone, worrying that her efforts might go unrecognized. From a distance, a familiar voice called her. Her king, aware of her abilities and the use of her power. True to his nature, he knew everything. Garm sprinted toward him, leaving the swirling crowd of voices behind. Back at the house where they were staying, the three of them discussed the missing persons in the unexplored area. An intermediate demon had appeared in level 3, and combining what each had gathered, they identified 2 key points. 7 people had gone missing, the first disappearing a month ago. Garm suspected the intermediate demon was the same one she and her companions had defeated previously. Nilf pointed out that human intervention was likely, noting that demons replenish their mana by taking the life force of others, and no intermediate demon could survive in such a low-level area alone. Shio concluded that someone must be feeding the demons, and decided that they needed to return to the battlefield.